an end, a time, a limit. Otherwise, every single second, the poor guy's waiting. It's a terchelis machlas slave. He's waiting for the boss to show up. So the Chassam Sofer brings this Rambam, and he says that we know, Hakadosh Baruch Hu says, Avadai Heim, that we're Hashem's Baruch's Avadim, we're His servants. And we are waiting for a long time for Yeshua's Hashem. And we don't know when the Kates is going to be. Many tried making predictions, but we don't know when the Kates is going to be, when the end is going to be. So Chassam Sofer says that it's a Beferish Rambam, that to leave your servant in a state of ongoing expectation and hope, and not knowing when it's the end, it's not avodas perach. So this is the story of our Golos, and that's what the Kalir is writing in the Kina. Hini aguma v'aguna yois me'elav shana. So how could there be a nechama? We don't know when this is over. We believe, we know that it's going to end, but we don't know when. This time of the day of Tisha B'Av, Hashem Yisborach wants us to begin to find nechama. So I want to talk to you about something that I mentioned once just in a drasha on a Shabbos morning some years ago, but I never really spoke to you about it by Riches. We'll begin with not Tisha B'Av, but the fifth day of Menachem Av. The fifth day of Menachem Av, which was a couple of days ago, that's the Hilula, that's the yard site of the Arizal. And it's brought down a Maaseh from the Aish Kodesh. It's not just a Maaseh. It's one of those stories that doesn't have a happy ending. I'm sure many of you have heard this and you remember that, as was his custom, the Aish Kodesh went with his Talmidim, with the Chavraya. He went out Friday to be Makabel Shabbos by Tzvas, outside in the field. And it says, it's brought down in the Svarim, that mitoch shahoyim meshayrim u'mezarmim, and the Chevra was singing, getting ready for Shabbos. And Oma ha'ari l'talmidov, the Arizal said to his Talmidim, Chaveirim, ritzoinchem sheneilech liYushalayim kodem HaShabbos, v'naseh Shabbos v'Yushalayim. He made an offer to the Chaveirim. He invited them to come with him to Yerushalayim to make Shabbos in Yerushalayim. Now, even with the most modern transportation, we're talking about candlelighting time. It's Kabbalah Shabbos. And there's no way to go from Tzvas to Yerushalayim to Makabel Shabbos. But he invited them. Ritzoinchem sheneilech liYushalayim kodem HaShabbos v'naseh Shabbos v'Yushalayim. Heshivu k'tzas min ha'talmidim onu shoymim b'kach. A couple of the Chevra said, let's go. Uk'tzas heshivu v'amru, but there were others, a few of the others said, what made a lot of sense, probably what we would have said, Neilech mikoydum levateinu v'neidil n'asheinu. What? We're just going to run home. We're with you. Rabbi, we're with you. Can we just go tell our wives? Nechrad harav charada gedola. And it's a totally fair thing. Nechrad harav charada gedola. The Aish Kodesh began to tremble. Charada gedola. Nehika kaf el kaf. The Arizal, and he began to cry, Oy lanu, shlahis lanu aschus lihigoel. Oy lanu, that we did not have the schus of Geula. Ilmole heisem holchem, ilmole heisem kulchem meshivim li pe'echad. If all of you would have said unanimously, Shatem roitzim leilech b'simcha gedola, that you're ready to go to Yerushalayim b'simcha gedola, takef hoyin negolim kol Yisrael. It would have been Mashiach. Takef hoyin negolim. Obviously, he wasn't allowed to tell them, guys, if we do this, Mashiach's coming. He wasn't given rishus for that. But the invitation was made. Some of the chevra needed a little bit more time. And the Arizal said, Takef hoyin negolim kol Yisrael. Va'ata chazra hagolus le'esana. Now Golus has returned in all of its strength. It's Golus. So this is a Ma'aseh from Arizal. This trip by Kabbalah Shabbos, by candlelighting to Yerushalayim from Svaz. It's not just a Ma'aseh with Arizal, which is Dayenu, to cause us plenty of Agmas Nefesh. So I was talking about this morning, missed opportunity. The Yerushalmi in Ma'aseh Sheni, in the 5th parak, the Yerushalmi tells us that there were Benos Lod and Benos Tzipori. Now, Lod, you know, that's actually where the airport is. That's Lod. Tzipori is up north. That there were Benos Lod and Benos Tzipori, Sheyeloshos Chalos Be'erev Shabbos, that they would need their chalos, the dough, Erev Shabbos. And Olul Beis HaMikdash L'Hispal, they would go from Lod and Tzipori to the Beis HaMikdash Erev Shabbos to daven. And they would return in time that the dough had risen, and they would bake the chalas, and then Makabel Shabbos back at home, in Lod and in Tzipori. And then the Gemara goes on to tell us, there's also an astonishing thing. You can't get from Lod or Tzipori to Yerushalayim and back for Shabbos. And then the Yerushalmi goes on and tells us about a Yid from Tiberia, who was the shamus in the shul in Tiberia. And every Erev Shabbos, he would prepare the candles in shul to light up the shul. He would go to Yerushalayim, and he would return to Tiberia and light the candles before Shabbos. And the Gemara and the Midrashim tell us other stories of simple Jews like the Shamas, or the girls in Lod and in Tzipori. Not the Arizal. Simple Jews who had some miraculous route, some way of transportation to get from Tzvas and Tveria to Yerushalayim and back in time for Shabbos. All of the stories that the Gemara and Medrash tell us take place Erev Shabbos, when it's Atat candlelighting. This round trip, Yerushalayim. At that time of Kabbalah Shabbos, when it's the Ma'avar, the transition from Chol to Kodesh, from the weekday to the Kedusha of Shabbos. So what's going on over here? With the Arizal, we just say, no, we say that the Aish Kodesh could do anything. But what's going on over here? And these are Gemaras. So, the Medrash brings this story of Benos Lod, the girls from Lod. The Medrash is in Medrash Eicha, and it brings this story on the Pasuk that we learned in Eicha last night in the third parak, where it says, Godar drochai bagozis, nesivoisai iva. He has walled in my ways with hewn blocks, with big rock stones. He has made my path a maze. Nesivoisai iva. So the Mefarshim explained the different perushim. The Mefarshim explained the pasuk means that the enemies have closed down the roads of Eretz Yisrael. The Jews are not able to travel on their roads because of the enemies who have made blockades and ambushes by the roads of Eretz Yisrael. So that's what the pasuk means when it says, Godar drochai bagozis nesivosai iva. So the roads, the pathways of Eretz Yisrael, part of the Golas was that we didn't have free travel. That our enemies would do this to us. I mean, you know what happened to those tzaddikim that were killed in Gush Etzion in 1948, in Latrun on the road, to block the way to Yerushalayim. No supplies were able to, no chever were able to come to help the guys in the Gush. This is not something which is new. It's interesting, they have been Lod, from the airport, this over there, Ben Gurion Airport is in Lod, and there have been travel restrictions from there as well over the course of the Milchama. Goda drachai begozes. Stimas hadrachim. The drachim are blocked, are closed. And yet, the Medrash is going on this pasuk, and the Medrash is telling us these miraculous stories of Eretz Yisrael, the Yidden Jews in Eretz Yisrael, who found a way to travel. Not just did they find a way to travel, but it was a kvitz derech. They found a way to travel. Erev Shabbos ben Hashmashos, from up north and from Lod all the way to Yerushalayim, from Tveria, from Tzfas, and to get back. So it seems that there used to be some alternative way of traveling in Eretz Yisrael, even during the time when our enemies were blocking the roads. Yid daf an eitzig gewinnen, and Jews found a way to travel, not just to travel schlepping on an animal, on a camel or a donkey for a couple of days, but to go in a couple of minutes back and forth from Yerushalayim to Yerushalayim and back. Then the Yerushalmi over there in Ma'aser Sheni tells us a different story. Again, it's a Jew from Lod. Why is Lod playing such a prominent place over here? I'm not going to go into right now. But there was a Yid from Lod who was working his field. He had an ox, and he was chayreish, he was plowing the field. And the behemoth got away. And the fellow runs after his animal. He chases the animal. And he ended up in Bavel. And the Gemara explains, the Gemara says over there, that all of these trips that we're talking about, Lod, Tzvas, Tveria, this farmer, all of these trips took place by way of mechilos, tunnels. I'm thinking a lot about tunnels, mechilos. And we see over here a contrast between the stories of those who were able to get to Yerushalayim, to Beis HaMikdash, and get back in time for Shabbos, and the Metzias of Golus. The Gemara says, Mechilois hoyu v'nignezu, that when the Beis HaMikdash was around, Jews knew secret tunnels. There were tunnels, they were opening to tunnels, and they were able to travel in such a strange way, a miraculous way, through these tunnels. But the Metzias of Golus is a Metzias that's described as Mechilos Hoyu V'nignazu. That these shortcuts, these tunnels, they were there once, but they're no longer available. They're hidden. We don't know where they are. Godar drochai bagazis nesivoisai iva. That's what the Chazal are telling us the pasuk is alluding to. That our pathways have been closed, have been shut. The tunnels, the holy tunnels. La'afuke, the impure, destructive tunnels of our enemies, which are for the purpose of Churban. That once upon a time, Jews had tunnels in Eretz Yisrael, and they were able to get to Yerushalayim back and forth, to go daven, to go to Beis HaMikdash. Mechilos hoyu v'nignazu. Goda drochai bagazis, nesivoisai iva. That our roads are shut, our tunnels are closed. Ad kedei kach, that the description of Golus is that this poor fellow, the farmer with his ox, goes running after the behemoth, and he ends up in some kind of a tunnel, and the tunnel doesn't take him to Yerushalayim, the tunnel takes him to Bavel. He started off in Lod, he was in Eretz Yisrael, and he ends up in Bavel, stuck with his behemoth in Bavel. So the morale in Netzach Yisrael, Lamed, if you have a chance, I mean the whole Netzach Yisrael, all the morale swarm, but Netzach Yisrael is about Golus and Gula. So there in the 34th parak of Netzach Yisrael, the morale writes, Yesh la medrash davar pnimi. This medrash about the mechilas, about the tunnels, Yesh la medrash davar pnimi. There's something very deep over here. Mechila is tachas hakarka, that there were tunnels, underground tunnels in Eretz Yisrael. We can't explain this kamashmo, like the pshat, I can't explain what this is. That there was a koach that was called the koach of tunnels, traveling with tunnels. But the Maral says this koach is nistav and elam. It is hidden from us. As it says in the Gemara, mechilas hayu v'nignazu. Kilo enam klal. And now in our Golus, kilo enam klal, kilo, we don't have them at all. But the potential is there. It was once there, and the Maral always says a klal that if something was once there, it can be again. But right now we don't have them, we don't know where they are and what they are. Ad la'osid yizgala koyach shalahem. But in the future, the koach of these mechilos will be revealed once again. No. Eila Maaseh b'nei Yisrael. We just learned last Shabbos. Eila Maaseh b'nei Yisrael. The road back to Yerushalayim is a very, very long one. Hinei aguma v'aguna yoisem elov shana, the Kalir says. It's already thousands of years. Of darchei tzion avelos. And we understand that what all of this is alluding to, what the Maral says, there's a davar pnimi. That we're not just talking about something physical. It's not just a way to pack your suitcases and get a 12:50 flight to Ben Gurion to Lod. That there's something in the way. That Golus, the definition of Golus is Mechilos hayu v'nignuzu. There was once upon a time when Jews knew how to get to Yerushalayim, and nothing would get in their way. Nothing would get in their way. Now, why is it always Erev Shabbos ben Hashmoshes, that journey from Kodesh, from Chol into Kedusha, into the world of Kedusha? There was a way the Jews knew once upon a time. We understand that in Pnimius, the Maral is telling us that Golus means that you might be able to pack a suitcase, and it could be that now the roads, the airways are open. That the blockages have ended, and Ben Gurion is open, and Jews can travel to Eretz Yisrael. But the meaning of Golus is that this journey of Eila Maaseh b'nei Yisrael, to get from New York to the Beis HaMikdash, to get from London to Beis HaMikdash, to get from Tzfas to the Beis HaMikdash Lod, Mechilos hayu v'nignazu. That for thousands of years, something is in the way. And that's what Golus means. That there's something that's in the way. And that trip from Bovel to Yerushalayim, from New York to Yerushalayim, doesn't only mean a physical journey. It means the trip from Chol to Kedusha, from Sheker, from falsehood to truth, to Emes. And this is described in Eicha as Godar Drochai Bagazes. Hashem, you have shut down the roads. You have closed the tunnels that used to take us into a world of Shabbos, into a world of Yerushalayim, into Beis HaMikdash. Like I was reading this morning from that Jew from Auschwitz, that the only nechama that he found was that he was able to close his eyes in the middle of that misery, standing next to the fires of the crematoria, that he was able to close his eyes and go back to Shabbos, to go back to his parents. So when Rabbi Yehuda Levi, who I mentioned this morning, Yehuda Levi, and we read the Kina from Yehuda Levi, and he said, Libi b'mizrach v'anochi b'seif ma'arav. Yehuda Levi made it to Eretz Yisrael. Again, as I mentioned, there are questions about what happened to him, how he was killed when he got there, so we don't know exactly when. But there was the Ishmaeli that killed him. Rabbi Yehuda Levi said, Libi b'mizrach, my heart is in the east. I mean, he lived in Spain. My heart is in Yerushalayim. V'anochi b'soif ma'arav. So Rabbi Yehuda Levi was saying that when a Jew's heart is completely in Yerushalayim, it was the question is, how do you have a tunnel like that? How was it that there were tunnels that led to Yerushalayim? And the Maral says it's a davar pnimi. So we need to try to understand what is the avodah pnimius of digging a tunnel. So when Rabbi Yehuda Levi said, Libi b'mizrach, Rabbi Yehuda Levi was saying is that I live b'soif ma'arav, I live all the way in the west. Spain is a lot closer than New York. I live all the way in the west. But Libi b'mizrach. Libi b'mizrach means there's nothing that's going to get in my way, because my heart is completely in Yerushalayim. And Rabbi Yehuda Levi did not have business class, and he didn't even have premium. But ultimately, Rabbi Yehuda Levi made his way. He found an opening, and he made his way back to Yerushalayim from Spain. And everybody knows that it's brought down in the name of the Baal Shem HaKodesh, his grandson, the Degel Machne Ephraim brings in Pashas Maseh, and Elam Maseh b'nei Yisrael. The Degel brings that he heard from his grandfather, from the Baal Shem HaKodesh. Hamokim shemachshavto shel Adam, everybody knows this. Hamokim shemachshavto shel Adam, that when a person's mind is firmly in a certain place, when his mind is there, Hamokim shemachshavto shel Adam, Shamhu kulai. Shamhu kula, then he is completely there. Gufa basar reisha gerira. As the Gemara says in Eruvin, that gufa, the body, follows the mind, the head. Gufa basar reisha gerira. That where the person's mind is, Rabbi Yehuda Levi said, Libi b'mizrach. When the mind of a Jew, when the heart of a Jew is completely b'mizrach, when there's that dveikis to Yerushalayim, then it seems that the mechilas are open. The tunnel is a tunnel from the mind to the legs, from the heart to the feet. And when Rabbi Yehuda Levi said, Libi b'mizrach, he ended up in Yerushalayim. Because there's only one way to open up those tunnels, the ancient tunnels of Eretz Yisrael. Libi b'mizrach. The metzias of Golus is that our hearts have drifted far away from Yerushalayim. We say the words. And we said a lot of words last night and today. But the metzias of Churban of Golus, what Chazal, what the Yerushalmi is telling us, and what happened somehow with Arizal and the Chaveir, the union of Golus is Kilkul Hadrachim. Kilkul Hadrachim, the pathways, the roads to Yerushalayim are blocked. In L'maaseh, we read that yesterday in the Torah. It says in Pasuk, Achad ha'sayim mechorev derech ha'seir, har seir, ad kadesh barneya. That means, Achad ha'sayim, the trip from Har Sinai to Eretz Yisrael, is an 11-day trip. That's really what it is. It's an 11-day trip. And that's with sleeping and resting along the way. Stopping off at bathrooms along the way. It's an 11-day trip, Achadas Hayom. Ad Kadesh Barnea. The distance is not far. The distance to Yerushalayim, to Eretz Yisrael, is not far. But there was a kilkel of the Meraglim, which is Tisha B'Av. And as a result of that, B'chia Shalchinim, as a result of that Chet HaMeraglim, and the ongoing Chet of the Meraglim through the years of Galus, Anochi B'Soif Ma'arav. Anochi means I feel that I am very, very far away. My mind, the mind and the heart, the Anochi, Libi Ubasari. So it was supposed to be an 11-day trip, which in those days is very short. An 11-day walk to get from Har Sinai to Eretz Yisrael. Achad Asar Yom. It says Beferish and Chumash. That trip of 11 days became Arbaim Shana Okut Badar. Hashem says, for 40 years I was provoked by your generation. Voimash Am To'e Levavheim, Am To'e Levavheim. You're fablongered, you lost the heart, Am To'e Levav. The road to Yerushalayim is a straight road. The road from Golus to Mashiach, from Sheker to Emes, from Friday to Shabbos, that road is a straight road. Abim Shanakut B'dor V'oimar Am To'e Levavheim V'heim Lo Yodu Drochai. David HaMelech is telling us that the description, the Metzias of Golus is V'heim Lo Yodu Drochai. So we always understood the simple pshat means that Lo Yodu Drochai, we don't we're off the derech. We're OTD. No, we don't keep mitzvahs properly. V'heim Lo Yodu Drochai. But now that we're learning about the tunnels, the mechilas, the girls from Sipari and Lod, and the farmer that got fablongered, he ended up going the wrong way. He ended up leaving Eretz Yisrael, and he found himself in Bavel. Bavel could be replaced with the 5 towns, Monroe, Muncie, London, wherever you happen to settle down. You were led there by your cow, by your ox. V'heim lo yodu drochai. As the Maral said, hakoach sheyesh lehem nistar v'ne'elam. This miraculous way to get back to Yerushalayim in a minute. This koach, he says, is nistar v'ne'elam. It is now in Golus, in Prague, where he was, in New York, where we are. It's nistar v'ne'elam. And even to get from the Kosel to the other side of the Kosel, how long does that take? It takes 10 seconds to get from one side of the Kosel to the other, to get to the place. Mechilos nasilhem, mechilos nistemu v'nignazu. Heim lo yudu drochai, the pathways are shut. Not only have the Yishmaelim thrown all their filth and their dirt to try to hide any remnant of the Bayis Rishon or the Bayis Sheni, which is why they have fought against all the archaeological digs. And where they go crazy when they see a Jew with a shovel over there. They go crazy because it looks like there's a Jew that's trying to find a tunnel, not one of their tunnels, who's trying to find a tunnel back to the Harabayas. I was zoich in January to be underneath the plaza, the Kaisel Plaza. Have you been under there? So you have to get reshus. We went with some chever that they were able to get us underneath there. It's a whole Yerushalayim underneath there. But to get from that side to the other side, the enemies have placed stones and rocks. But what we're learning now about the Mechilas is the stone is the Leiv Shel Evan. V'heim lo yodu drachai, am toyei leiv avheim. Chazal tell us that when Mashiach comes, there are going to be mechilos they're going to be tunnels, underground tunnels, and the 10 lost tribes are going to go with these tunnels back to Yerushalayim. They're going to come from the other side of Nahar Sambatyon, of that river. Now everybody, there have been many, many travelers that have been Binyamin Mitudela and others who have tried to find the Nahar Sambatyon. It's a state of mind. It's a way of thinking. Mashiach comes, there are going to be tunnels that are going to lead the Shvatim back, the lost tribes back. Tahar Eis. And the Gemara says in Ksubas and Daf Kuf Yud Aleph, the Gemara says that the tzaddikim who died in Chutz La'aretz, who are buried in Chutz La'aretz, they're going to roll back to Har Hazeisim. How? Guess how? With mechilos, through the tunnels. The tunnels are going to be opened again. The Gemara says, mechilos nasalahem bekarka. The mechilos are going to be reopened. All the underground tunnels that even simple Jews knew at the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Those underground tunnels are going to be opened. And the Mesim are going to get up on their feet, they're going to get out of the graves. And they're going to go in these tunnels to Eretz Yisrael. And then they're going to come out from the ground like a tree. Sadik Atamar Yifrach. And the Tikkun Hisorerus speaks about this in a few places in greater detail. So, however, the side of the Mechila is digging tunnels. There are Avnei Gozes. Eicha Yirmiyah Navi says that there are Avnei Gozes, there are big boulders that are in the way and have blocked the openings to these Mechilas. We now understand that when the Maharal speaks about a Koach Pnimi, the Navi spoke about this Koach Pnimi long before the Maharal Prague. We're going to be laying in the Haftarah Shabbos Nachamu. The Navi Yeshaya, in Perek Mem, Nachamu Nachamu Ami, Kol Kaire B'Midbar, and it says in the Pasuk, Kol Kaire B'Midbar, Panu Derech Hashem. Clear out. Panu Derech Hashem. Clear the path back to Hashem, to Yerushalayim. Harimu Michshol Miderech Ami. Lift up the Michshol, that which is blocking Miderech Ami, that's blocking my people from coming back. It's not the Arabs and their rocks and their stones. It's Am Toy Levov, hey. Solu panu derech harimu michshol miderech ami kol kari b'midbar panu derech Hashem yashru ba'arov mesila lelokeinu. It says in Navi. One is in Nun Zayin and the other is in Mem. Panu derech Hashem yashru ba'arov mesila lelokeinu. Clear away a path, a tunnel, mesila that leads directly lelokeinu. So this Koach Pnimi, what the Maharal is talking about there in Netzach Yisrael, is the Koach of Rabbi Yehuda Levi that brought into Eretz Yisrael without planes, without trains and boats. Oh, there were boats. But mostly he walked by foot. The koch pnimi is a koch of kisuf, of davening, of gaguim, of crying, of tzipis liyeshua, of dreaming. And that's the way to dig those tunnels. Rabbi Yehuda Levi said, Libi b'mizrach. And that's why I've said over and over that those Jews who can't live without Eretz Yisrael, they get there. Mechilos, somehow they get there. Everybody else talks about, dreams about, makes plans, nefesh b'nefesh, has meetings, goes to different shuls where they have, Israel fairs or something and exhibitions and all the good stuff, goes to the parades. They don't necessarily make their way over. Rabbi Yehuda Levi got there. And the mechila that depends on digging with these longings, with these kisuf. The Yerushalmi says, a famous Gemara, the Yerushalmi in Sanhedrin, Anun Aleph, it says, Hoyu malachi hashares misatmin es achaloinish loitala tfilosu shomanash lefnei Kadosh Baruch Hu. That the malachi hashares shut the pathways between heaven and earth, not to allow the tefillas of Menashe, the king, to get to Hashem. You all know the story. Menashe was doing a lot of big averos, the worst stuff. So the Malachi Asheris shut the windows and closed the pathways leading from earth to heaven so that the tefillas of Menashe should not be able to make their way to Hashem. V'hoyu Malachi Asheris oimim ufnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom, Odom she'ovad avodah zarah v'hemed tzelem v'heichal. A yid that he not only did he make avodah zarahs, but he put them into the heichal of the Beis Hamikdash. Atam makablu b'tshuva. You're going to let him come back to you. You're going to allow his tefillas to get to you, to fly to you, to travel to you. Omelahen. Hashem said to the angels, if I don't accept his tefillas, his tshuva, I am shutting the tunnels, the pathways for all Balei Tshuva. So what did Hashem do? Because the Malachim closed down the airways. So what did Hashem do? Hashem dug a tunnel underneath his Kisei HaKavod. V'shomat chinoso. And Menashe's tefillas were able to crawl and to climb up to the Kisei HaKavod through the secret tunnel. But the Malachim made the Malachim shut down the airport. And Hashem's Baruch went on the side and he made a tunnel and he told Menashe, come on, any Jew could do tshuva. Hashem says, everybody can find their way back to me. You can crawl back to me, you come back to me, I want you back. You have to want it. V'shomat chinoso hadohu d'chsiv v'yispalul eila v'yeoseloi v'yishmat chinoso v'yishiveyu. He went back to Yerushalayim l'malchusai. And therefore the word for mechila, for a tunnel, is the same word as slach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu, kikel moichel v'soleach ata. That even Menashe the Rosh, because of his gagum, because of his kisufim, because he wanted to go back, because he really, really meant it, even though he did every aveira in the world. The Rebbe himself opened up the tunnel, and Menashe found a way to get back. And if these are the tunnels, just another, we have to put on film, another minute, and then after Mincha, I'm going to share with you an amazing story. The Mara writes there in Netzach Yisrael Amidalid about the disappearance of the 10 Shvatim. I thought Menachem announced it's going to be 7:45, not 7:40, but okay. The Maral says, "Ubishvil ka chayenidol Yosef, shemenu shevet Ephraim, shu ikra seus hashvatim." This fight that was between Yosef and his brothers, this misunderstanding, created a wall between Yosef and his brothers. And the Maral says that because of that, the 10 Shvatim are missing. Because the 10 Shvatim, the Ikus Ephraim, who comes from Yosef, that's Malchus Yisrael. They're missing, they're gone. Shu Ikra Aseres HaShvatim, V'yinivdol Me'echav, Kol Inyan Zeh Simen La'asid, Shu Aseres HaShvatim Be'eretz Acheres, Nivdolim Yisrael Acheyam. The Maral says this is a siman that the brothers didn't see each other. There was a wall between the brothers. They couldn't dig a wall leading to each other during those years. And that's Harugei Malchus, because of the 10, what happened with the brothers, that they sold Yosef at Tzaddik. Ad Alois Herotzen L'Chabra Oisem B'Yachad. Until Mashiach comes. And our brothers are all going to be brought back together. In the meantime, there are walls between Jews. There are Avnei Gozes. There are big boulders between these kind of, even from Jews. There are walls, big boulders between this Jew and that Jew. And they can't be moichel each other. And because they can't be moichel each other, Nistamu, the mechilos are shut closed. That a Jew can't fagin another Jew. And one can't let another Jew through into his life. And because of that, the Maral says, until Mashiach comes, until that time of Oshkash Baruch Lasos, Mochel L'Tzadikim, Hafakta Misbedi L'Mochol Li. Hafakta Misbedi L'Mochol Li. The dance of the end of time, when Jews are going to be able to see Hashem and say, Zeh Hashem Kivinu Lo, and to finally look at each other in the eyes. There's a mother who told me last week that her son is serving in the army, in the religious division of the army, and somebody from his yeshiva met him in the Makolet. And when he met him in the Makolet, his head was surrounded with bandages because he just got out of the hospital. His head, he had bandages all over his head, and he had bandages all over him. And the guy from the yeshiva told him, Shegitz. Shegitz. The one who has saved his life is a Shegitz. He called him a Shegitz. He didn't ask him, how you feeling? Thank you. What can I do for you? I'm sorry I didn't visit you in the hospital. He called him a Shegitz. Now this is very crazy and very extreme. Yesh ka'elu, lo chaser ka'elu. They don't forget one Jew the other. There's not a mechila between one Jewish heart and another Jewish heart. So how do we expect it to be mechilas that go from New York to Yerushalayim? You can't get from Tzfas to Yerushalayim. You can't get from Yerushalayim to Yerushalayim. You can't get across the wall. Because you can't cross over that place to see your brother and to look at your brother in your eyes and tell him, I love you. And until we are able to make those trips from one to the other, we're not going to find ourselves in Yerushalayim, and we're not going to get to the other side of the wall. That's what's in the way. And when we do, Az Anoche. And Hashem is telling us the time has come for that. It's been many, many, many years. And this is the Nisayon that we're going through right now. And don't think it's just in Eretz Yisrael. It's here. It's with your own friend that you haven't spoken to. It's with your own sister-in-law or brother-in-law. It's with your parents. Whatever it is, each person has his walls and the tunnels that haven't been dug. Until each one of us is able to look at each other in the eyes and say, Ani Yosef. Hashem Yisborach should help us. There's only Shlav Aleph. I'll read you a story after Mincha. Hashem Yisborach should help us. We've been hearing for the last 2 years about the tunnels of our enemies. Hashem Yisborach should help us to dig our tunnels of Kedusha, to get back to Yerushalayim, to get back to each other, to be Zocheh Mr. Hashem, to come to that time of Ki Ayin B'Ayin, to see Mashiach Tzidkenu, eye to eye, and to look at us in the eyes. With the Glush V'Amitis, Amen V'Amen. Let's get ready for Mincha. Okay, Rabbi, if you don't mind. we're actually in the middle of the shir. I thought I'd have another half hour, 40 minutes. I wanted so much to do with you, Ramchal and the Maimar Kivui, and to do Rabbi Moshe Chalap and Maimor. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking there'd be a lot more time, but there is time to at least to do this story that I wanted to. So for those of you who are not here, this is going to be just absolutely ridiculous. And for those of you who are here for the shir, it's going to be very meaningful. So I'm not even going to give any Hagdama. We just have a few minutes. It's a story, I might have told it to you years ago. This is written by Shai Agnon, but it's based upon all that we were learning about this last hour plus. The Mechilos, the tunnels, digging our way back to Yerushalayim. Golus as being a time where the Mechilos are nignas, where we can't find our way back. But that distance that we're trying to cross is really from the heart to our feet, and so on, all that we were learning about. So I'm just going to read it with you. You could probably press a button. It's out there. It's called The Fable of the God by Shai Agnon. Now, you know that Shai Agnon was a frum person. Not only was he a frum person, he was a very learned person. So there are many, many allusions to Chazals and Psukim in his writings, and in this one as well. Okay, so for those of you who are not here for this year, look at Pirkei Avos or do something. And those of you here, just listen carefully. The tale is told of an old man who groaned from his heart. The doctors were sent for, and they advised him to drink goat's milk. He went out and bought a she-goat and brought her into his home. Not many days passed before the goat disappeared. They went out to search for her, but did not find her. She was not in the yard and not in the garden, not on the roof of the study house, and not by the spring, not in the hills, and not in the fields. She tarried several days and then returned by herself. And when she returned, her udder was full of a great deal of milk, whose taste was as the taste of Gan Eden. Not just once, but many times, she, the goat, disappeared from the house. They would go out and search for her, and would not find her until she returned by herself with her udder full of milk that was sweeter than honey, and whose taste was the taste of Eden. One time the old man said to his son, "My son, I desire to know where she goes. Where does this goat go? And whence she brings this milk, which is sweet to my palate and a balm to all my bones?" His son said to him, "Father, I have a plan." He said to him, "What is it?" The son got up and brought a length of cord. In Hebrew, it's a chevel, like chevle Mashiach. The son got up and brought a length of cord. He tied it to the goat's tail. His father said to him, "What are you doing, my son?" He said to him, "I am tying a cord to the goat's tail, so that when I feel a pull on it, I will know that she has decided to leave, and I can catch the end of the cord and follow her on her way." The old man nodded his head and said to him, "My son, B'ni chacham libecha yismach gam libi gamani. My son, if your heart is wise, my heart too will rejoice." The youth tied the cord to the goat's tail and minded it carefully. When the goat set off, he held the cord in his hand and did not let it slacken until the goat was well on her way and he was following her. He was dragged along behind her until he came to a cave. Now, the cave is the mecholos that we're talking about. The goat went into the cave, and the youth followed her, holding the cord. They walked thus for an hour or two, or maybe even a day or two. The goat wagged her tail and bleated, and the cave came to an end. When they emerged from the cave, the youth saw lofty mountains and hills full of the choicest fruit, and a fountain of living waters that flowed down from the mountains, and the wind wafted all manners of perfumes. The goat climbed up a tree by clutching at the leaves. Carob fruits full of honey dropped from the tree, and she ate of the carobs and drank of the garden's fountain. The youth stood and called to the wayfarers, "I adjure you, good people, tell me, where am I? What is the name of this place?" They answered him, "You are in the land of Israel, you are in Eretz Yisrael, and you are close by to Tzfas." The youth lifted up his eyes to the heavens and said, "Blessed be Hashem Melech HaOlam, who has brought me to the land of Israel." He started off in Poland. He kissed the soil and sat down under the tree. He said, until the day breathe, until the shadows flee away, the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, "I shall sit on the hill under this tree. I shall sit under the hill, and I shall sit on the hill under this tree. Then I shall go home and bring my father and mother to the land of Israel." So the boy was led on this rope by the goat. The goat pulled. think that's alluding to now the Seir of Achosna, that's alluding to Yishmael and to Esau, the Seir, the goat, who's pulling us back to Eretz Yisrael. But his parents are in Poland. So he said, "Then I shall go home and bring my father and mother to the land of Israel." As he was sitting thus and feasting his eyes on the holiness of the land of Israel, he heard a voice proclaiming, "Come, let's go out and greet the Shabbos queen." Ties back to the Arizah, where we were talking about the Gemara and Shabbos. And he saw men like angels, wrapped in white shawls, with myrtle, with hadassim in their hands, and all the houses were lit with great many candles. He perceived that the eve of Shabbos would arrive with the darkening, and that he would not be able to return back to Poland, to the cave, to the tunnel. He uprooted a reed, and dipped it in gall nuts, from which the ink for the writing of Torah scrolls is made. He took a piece of paper and wrote a letter to his father. "From the ends of the earth, I lift up my voice in song to tell you that I have come in peace to the land of Israel. Here I sit close by Tzfas, the holy city, and I imbibe its sanctity. Do not inquire how I arrived here, but I hold on to this cord, which is tied to the goat's tail, and follow the footsteps of the goat. Then your journey will be secure, and you will enter the land of Israel." So he's telling his father to hold on to the cord. The youth then rolled up the note and placed it in the goat's ear. He said to himself, "When she arrives at father's house, father will pat her on the head, and she will flick her ears. The note will fall out. Father will pick it up and read what is written on it. Then he will take up the cord and follow the goat to the land of Israel." The goat returned to the old man, but she did not flick her ears, and the note did not fall. When the old man saw that the goat had returned without his son, he clapped his hands to his head and began to cry and weep and wail, my son, where are you? My son, that I might die in your stead, my son, my son." So he went weeping and mourning over his son, for he said, "An evil beast has devoured him. My son is assuredly rent in pieces," like Yosef with the brothers. And he refused to be comforted, saying, "I will go down to my grave in mourning for my son." And whenever he saw the goat, he would say, "Woe to the father who banished his son, and woe to her who drove him from the world." The old man's mind would not be at peace until he sent for the butcher to slaughter the goat. The butcher came and slaughtered the goat. As they were skinning her, the note fell out of her ear. The old man picked up the note and said, "My son's handwriting." When he had read all that his son had written, he clapped his hands to his head and cried, "Vai, vai, woe to the man who robs himself of his own good fortune, and woe to the man who requites good with evil." He mourned over the goat many days and refused to be comforted, saying, "Woe to me, for I could have gone up to the land of Israel in one bound. With the Mechilas, I could have gone up to Eretz Yisrael. And now I must suffer out my days in this exile." Since that time, the mouth of the cave has been hidden from the eye, exactly what we're talking about, and there is no longer a short way. And that youth, the son, if he has not died, shall bear fruit in his old age, full of sap and richness, calm and peaceful in the country of life. So there's no time to go back to this and to explain, but the way that we came to Eretz Yisrael, to begin with the kibush of Yehoshua. It says in Pasuk in Yeshua Perek Beis, "V'toridem rochav, v'toridem b'chevel ba'ad hachalon." There was a cord, there was a rope, and she let the meraglim down through the window. Ki beisa b'kir achomo b'chom hi yosheves. And then they said to her, "Hini anachnu boim ba'aretz as tikvas chut hashani." This crimson cord, tikshari b'chalon, tie it to the window, asher horedetenu, that you let us down by this cord. So there's the cord that's pulling us back to Eretz Yisrael. The goat, we're in the process of shechting this goat, the Seir v'chaisnai, our enemies that are bringing us back to Eretz Yisrael. How is it that the son ended up in Eretz Yisrael and the parents got stuck in Poland? So what Shai Agnon is alluding to is that many of the young people are all excited at this time. They were the ones that were going back to Eretz Yisrael, while the older ones were staying in Galus, and ultimately many of them were killed in Galus. So the message is very clear. I wanted to do with you the Ramchal, and the Ramchal, the Maimer HaKivui. The whole message is, Kavri Hashem Chazak V'yamis Libecha, L'Yishuascha Kivisi Hashem. The rope is pulling us back. Hashem Yisrael should help us, that we should allow ourselves to be taken back by that rope. And I'll just end with this 30-second story that I wanted to share with you, that I saw today. It says that there's a sipur from Rabbi David Lelever that when he was in Eretz Yisrael, the one that was in Eretz Yisrael, that he went to Meron for Lag BaOmer. And he was staying in Tzfas. And on Lag BaOmer, he went walking from Tzfas to Meron, which I've done. It's not so easy a walk, but it's doable, and thousands of people do it. But Derech LaMiron, it says that he saw there was an old woman, an old Svardish woman, Haleches Gamkein Ragli LaMiron, that she was walking by foot from Tzfas up to Miron. She was so old. The walk was a hard walk. What we were talking about before, the trip back, it's a hard walk. It's a very hard walk from Tzfas to Miron. You have to go higher and higher. It says, believe me, there was a grandson that was walking with her, and the old lady was climbing all the way up to Miron. Finally, after a long time, the old lady, she came b'shalom to Miron. She went into the cave of Rabbi Shimon. She was a Sephardic woman. She began to scream out in Hebrew, in Ivrit, Rabbi Shimon, Shchinta begalusa, Shchinta begalusa. Rabbi Shimon, the Shechina is still in Galus. The Shechina is in Galus. Vamra Od Bakasha, Rav David Eleva said, she said something else in Arabic. She didn't understand, but he was told to me, Shakash Baruch Yirakim, Yikabitz Gal Yisaynu. V'noshka Sat Sion HaKadosh, she gave a kiss to Rabbi Shimon Sion. V'schilas HaDerech Harucha Lachsol Tzfas, and she began her walk back to Tzfas. Harav HaKadosh, Rav David Eleva would tell this story over B'spilus Atzuma, on the tamimus of this old Svardish lady, how she walked such a long way, and what she said when she got there. Rabbi Shimon Shchinta Begalusa. So we're screaming out to Rabbi Shimon from all the way here, from the 5 towns. Rabbi Shimon, Shchinta Begalusa. Bring us home. We should be zeicht to go home.